My first exposure to Michigan nonprofits and foundations was probably when I was working for Governor Milliken in the 1970s. Even in that era, the foundations were trying to partner with state government on many different recreational, human service issues. And then when I left the governor's office in the early 80s, I became active in a public policy consulting firm, public sector consultants, and we just treasured our relationships with foundations and with nonprofit organizations, many of the trade and professional associations in Lansing, the big healthcare systems. And the relationships were warm. They were, I hope, mutually satisfying. And so yes, I go back quite a ways. I do remember Dottie Johnson so fondly. She is just a hero for all of us. This creation, the Council of Michigan Foundations, of course, was not an accident. Michigan was the place in the country for the location of major foundations, and that they would come together and create kind of an overarching umbrella organization for them, allowed for them to leverage what their gifts were against others and kind of build a bigger pie. And it also was a great parking place, the council was, for the shopping of public policy ideas. You know, if we needed maybe in state government, you know, some kind of incentive for local communities to expand their parks, you would pick up the phone and you would call Dottie. Now you would call Rob. And you'd say, do you think anybody would have any interest in that? Oh yeah, I'll get back to you in 48 hours. And you know, not every question was answered positively, but every opportunity that paired up a public sector goal and a foundation goal, it made all the difference in the world on so many different fronts. There are so many trade groups in society. Gosh, if you want to know how Lansing, Michigan is run, how the state government is run, just go into the yellow pages of the Lansing phone directory and look under Michigan Association of, and you'll see just page after page. Well, it was inevitable that the nonprofit community would create a body that would, again, leverage one group's investments with another's, but most particularly that it have representation, this nonprofit sector, which after all represents 20% of the gross domestic product of Michigan, employs probably bordering on 500,000 people now, more than 10% of our workforce. But that sector have a presence in Lansing, that it actively engages governors, Senate leaders, and House leaders, and all the myriad of agencies in state government. Government can't do everything. And frankly, the nonprofit sector can't do everything. So the idea is to kind of pair up public needs and who's best able to fill those needs and who's got the bank account, who can help make it work. Engaging government like talking to a reporter is terrifying for a lot of people. Not I, but a lot of people. And so I think what you have to do is have a mentor who gives you comfort that government is an unwieldy beast, even state government is. Here are the steps. One, what is the problem that you want solved? Two, what portion of that problem can be best solved by state government? Okay. Three, get your facts in order. Don't come in there with no answers to 4 key questions. Then number 4, meet with other groups who will also want to attack that problem and see if you can form a coalition. 5, retail your idea directly to the governor, the governor's key staff people, perhaps an agency head, key legislators, House and Senate. Who are the chairs of the committees who are going to have to maneuver this bill through the legislative process? And then never be bashful, and never let a meeting end without that comment, may I count on your support. One of the hardest things to get through any government is change in tax policy. And it was a very uphill fight for the community foundations when they sought to get it credit in our Michigan income tax law for gifts to their endowments. It was tough sledding, not only because state government was in essence cutting back its revenue, which some years is okay, but in a lot of years is not okay. But also there were all these other competing organizations and wonderful causes who said, hey, you know, if a gift to a community foundation gets a tax credit, how come a gift to me shouldn't qualify? And somehow, and if you get too many people in the mix, then legislators get scared off. And first of all, they're scared off by the sheer size of the cut in revenue. And then they're also saying, why should I play Solomon and decide a community foundation is better than a public broadcasting station? So it was I give, my hat is off to the leaders of the nonprofit sector in this state for winning a major battle. It's off the books now, but the precedent is there, and I think probably in better times it'll be reawakened. At least the consciousness of politicians will be reawakened. So, you know, nothing is forever. A basic rule of advocacy is that you go out of your way not to make enemies. That anybody who sits in a position of power is almost by definition a great listener. And that person is paid handsomely by taxpayers to sit in his or her office and hear appeals coming in. What every organization must do, though, is to be very careful about appealing only to one political party or the other political party, to make an issue a partisan issue. There are Republican and Democratic ways of solving certain problems, but in the nonprofit sector and the delivery of services to people, there are rarely Republican or a Democratic answer to the problem. And so it's comfortable to go to power players in both political parties and make an appeal to them, and to definitely stay away from any belief in Lansing or any place else that my charity happens to have a conservative bent, a liberal bent, a Republican, a Trotskyite bent. You know, you got to stay away from that. One of my kind of favorite stories, and I'm not going to name names. I was trying to build an advocacy program for state arts organizations, arts and cultural groups. In order to get something pushed through Lansing, it was important for me to reach out to arts leaders in different communities, all parts of the state, and to ask them to pick up the phone and call Senator so-and-so or Representative so-and-so. It's much better coming from a local leader than it is from a Lansing lobbyist. I was on a conference call one day. We had about 5 people, arts leaders in, well, I'll be honest, it was Grand Rapids. And we were on a conference call, and I gave them their marching orders and why it was so important that they reach out to Kent County legislators. A person on the call said, that is unethical. And I said, you know, I think I hold pretty strong ethics. I don't think there's anything unethical that I'm asking you to do. And the person said, I'm going to have to go to my board of directors. And I said, well, by all means do, because members of your board are very active in the community. The odds are any one of them would know on a first name basis. You're a state senator or your state rep. And feel free to ask them to help. Oh, no, that's not the reason I'm going to the board of directors. I'm going to them to report you. So there is this, it transcends squeamishness. In some quarters of the nonprofit sector, there's actually a frightening thing. It's a frightening thing to go into the political milieu, but it's a healthy thing. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector, and I've served on probably 75 different boards of nonprofit organizations. So I think I know that sector too. Regardless of what sector you're in, what's the most important thing on your plate? The most important thing is to be effective. If you are effective, whatever your mission in life is, and whatever your strategies are, you can wake up the next morning and pat yourself on the back and go about doing more good that day. What we have found in this complex society is that to be effective, you often need to join with another sector. A great example would be the Detroit riverfront redevelopment. That couldn't have happened, that could not have occurred without Detroit area philanthropies mustering support among their boards and mustering public support and providing very healthy chunks of money. It couldn't have been done without state government, because state government and the city of Detroit were partners at the table in constructing this breathtaking redevelopment. And it couldn't have been done without the private sector. The major corporations in Southeast Michigan fueled huge investments in this development, which I believe, whose price tag I think was more than $300 million. So I would say the Detroit riverfront is a great example of the sectors coming together. And you know, we kind of say, well, the nonprofit sector and the government sector, they're the ones interested in the commonweal, the commonwealth, and common good. Well, I'd say corporations do that too. They keep an eye out in their own communities about how they can return some of the profit that they have gleaned. I can't think of a place in Michigan more robust in terms of corporate commitment to community life than Grand Rapids. In Midland, I can't picture Midland without the Herbert H. and Grace A. Dow Foundation. I can't picture Flint without the Mott Foundation. And you can't picture any of those foundations without brilliant entrepreneurs who invested heavily in their own brain power and their wallets in creating corporations of international scope. Detroit riverfront, I don't think that you could single out one specific spark plug, one convener of the initial meeting. I think it was probably one of those situations that evolved through just many different conversations. 3 or 4 business leaders going out to lunch one day, and one of them just casually mentions, why can't we have a really beautifully designed riverfront, you know? Or another person saying, they were gonna build a casino on this beautiful river, when in fact, casino operators, as you well know, blacken the windows so that nobody can tell whether it's daylight or nighttime. They want to keep you at the craps table. So there was no single spark plug. The reason Michigan is respected not just in the United States but throughout the world for its philanthropy is because of its leadership. You know, scale is one thing. It is certainly one thing that the W.K. Kellogg Foundation was, I think, arguably the largest foundation in the United States at one point, and we have had many, many other foundations of great scale. But scale alone isn't enough to change society. You need leaders who can get to other leaders. You need leaders who are world-class listeners, not just pontificators. You need a leadership quality which I'll call consensus building. Somebody who is willing to accept 10% of their idea as part of the total solution and not reject a solution that isn't completely compatible with where they're going. I think Dottie Johnson and Russ Mawby most particularly, but I think Rainey Rieker and Bill White, and now I'm going to get in trouble because I'm not mentioning names I should, but they're real titans. They'd be titans in any field. You know, if they were in a healthcare system, they'd be the CEO or the chief surgeon. If they were in the corporate world, they'd be the CEO or the COO. They'd work anywhere and be effective. And it's just all those qualities, empathy, sometimes willing to be a world-class follower in addition to being a leader. I can think of so many examples where Dottie and Russ and Randy and others I've seen them in action. So it's kind of hard to isolate one or two, but I would say that if you're ever in the Midland area, you pick up the phone, you call Randy, or you call Janae Velasquez at the foundation, and you say, could I borrow you for 45 minutes, and I'd like you to take me around Midland and point out the qualities that you've contributed to, be it parks, be it restoration of homes, homeless shelters, just everything, the healthcare system. And sure, I'd be in Randy's boardroom from time to time, and I would watch how diligent she and other members of the board were in fly-specking proposals, making sure that they were going to get a decent return on investment. But everything that I've ever seen out of Randy Rieger and that foundation has been first class. Well, it may sound tacky, but in a graduate class that I teach at the University of Michigan in public policy, I have only 2 required textbooks, and one of them is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. What I try to instill in graduate students is not a sense of smartness, but a sense of salesmanship. That somebody in their 20s or somebody in their 30s, probably in a cynical way, believes that the whole world revolves around the concept that it's not what you know, it's who you know. But what I find very comforting is it's not who you know that counts. It's who you get to know that counts. And in this world of shrinking distances between and among people, you're 1, 2 degrees, 3 degrees tops separation from virtually anybody in the world. And so I'll tell my grad students, one of your required tasks during the term is to scoop up 250 business or personal cards. You can get them from anywhere you want. You just can't cheat. You can't go into a restaurant where they have one of those big glass bowls and everybody throws in their corporate card to win a free lunch. You can't go in and scoop all those up. You have to get them from individual human beings. But I think networking is just, in my whole life, I've never found anything that worked better for me than expanding every week the network of people I'm in touch with. Not everybody likes me. I don't like everybody. But the very fact that a Rolodex holds 4,000 or 5,000 names, and as I get older, maybe a few of them are passing away, and a few of them I've forgotten who they are, but oh my, it's such a blessing. And you can make things work that way. You got a dilemma, you got a problem you want to solve. You just go through your Rolodex and say, well, that person could help me on that. That person could help me on that. It's.
Have you found people generally willing to help?
Oh, everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to help. I can say no to a car dealer. Okay, I can't say no to a Dottie Johnson. I can't say no to a Governor Milliken. I can't say no to a Debbie Dingle in Detroit. These are acquaintances and friends, and friends don't let other friends down. In the modern age, in the last 20 years since the internet, we've kind of all become blasé about the past. We think that life was terribly difficult and that all the rules got upended with the invention of the internet. Well, it has made the world smaller. There's no question about that. But the basic thing has always held true. You have a goal, you develop the plan, and you work the plan. Very basic. To the extent that in working the plan, you've got to meet people who you don't know, you go out of your way and meet the people you don't know. You can't work a plan just alone, a plan of any action. Going back to what I said earlier, the word is effective, effective. And in order to be effective in meeting your mission in life, be it making money, be it winning a public office, or being smart in philanthropic gifts, requires that you've got to bring in armies of people into your fold. You've got to win friends and influence people all the time. Keep your eyes on that prize. And it's government, at least, is not as closed as a lot of people think it is. Again, you will run into your state senator or your state representative at a dry cleaners on a Saturday morning. They hold district hours. They expect people to come into their offices and ask for things and say, here's a real dilemma, here's a problem in downtown Saginaw, can you help fix it? That's part of their job description, is to be open and to be good listeners. They don't always make the choices I'd make, but I've never seen a politician be deaf. When you talk about servant leadership in Michigan, I guess it goes hand in hand with our history. We were settled in this nation, in this state, by people coming from New England, and they were Puritans. They had very strong ethics. They were maybe not the most humorous people in the world, but they got the job done. And there was a work ethic that they instilled. They also brought Yankee mentalities. What are Yankee mentalities? Gentleness, gentility, niceness, warmth. Then, as obviously waves of other immigrant groups came into the state, you had the Germans introducing the concept of a free public education in kindergarten, and subsequent waves of immigrants, the African Americans from the Deep South during the 19-teens and 1920s, and they brought their own cultural pride, their own cultural bent to the state. When you meld all that together, what arises to the occasion are some, not a great number, but some people who say, this great state that my ancestors helped build, it's my job to help protect it. There's a chauvinism in Michigan, too, about the fresh water. You can go, every state is chauvinistic about something. You drive through Georgia, hey, we got great peaches. You come to Michigan, and what are you thrilled about? The fact that we're nearly completely surrounded by one of the world's treasured masses of fresh water. And so Michigan wears that with great pride. Well, when you're proud, you tend to think, how can I pay back? When you're proud of how life has dealt with you and your success, you tend to peel off some of that success as a payback to the people around you who helped. Boy, I'm a big believer in the wisdom of Malcolm Gladwell, the author of The Tipping Point and other books. Small things can make an enormous difference. Little things can tip the balance. I say to people, put in your purse or put in your vest pocket a piece of paper that says the right answer at the wrong time is the wrong answer. But for every right answer, there is a right time. You got to seize the moment. I would say that in addition to knowledge and money and power, there's another thing I'd add to the mix, and that is just world-class and great instincts. Sometimes people just don't trust their instincts, when in fact their instincts may be far more valuable than the U-Haul of reports that I've got backing me up. The best is a situation in which you have a rich life experience and you have great instincts and you trust them. In that sense, you've combined the two great things. I've seen very small amounts of money being invested in some community program by a community foundation that would equal in payback multi-million-dollar grants that have been bestowed upon an organization someplace in the world or someplace in the country or state. It isn't necessarily the scale of the money. It's how purposeful the philanthropist is, how sharp and keen he or she is about what the return on an investment is going to be, and what are the odds that this thing is going to work? And that, again, is life experience and instinct. So I think it's a complicated world in solving problems, and you don't have to always go to the big 800-pound gorillas. And in some cases, might be better off getting a smaller gift from a larger number of people than one major gift from one player. I'm such a firm believer in the wisdom of networking. And so when you first encounter a person, sometimes you don't even remember. I remember first meeting Randy Rieker in the late 1960s, early 70s in Ann Arbor. And we've just stayed in touch for 40 years. In terms of how the governor would manage the list of projects and requests from Philanthropy for help is through an office that he has and an individual he has, and Governor Granholm before Governor Snyder, who would take all these competing requests for money from requests from state agencies for help, and would try to organize them, have the governor set priorities among them, so that when she picks up the phone and calls a Rob Collier and says, the governor's got 2 things he would really like some help on, it's not 100 things, it's 2 things. And that they're manageable sums of money, that the governor is not asking for $5 billion, that the governor may be asking for $50,000 to staff a state mental health task force. But you have an organized central spot in state government for managing both the priorities of an administration and then the requests being made of Michigan Philanthropy. There is no similar connection with business, no. Although, we must be honest with ourselves. Corporations have foundations. And so to the extent that the administration, the governor's administration, whoever the governor is, might need some money to help on a task force or a cause, that it may be just as likely that a corporate foundation General Motors Foundation, DTE Foundation, and so forth, would be as likely to be a participant at the table as either a family foundation or a private foundation. In the early 1990s, I had just moved into the board chair of a group called Concerned Citizens for the Arts in Michigan. It's the advocacy group for arts and culture. Within a week, Marilyn Wheaton, who was the founding executive director, the only executive director, called me and said that Mayor-elect Dennis Archer wanted her to join his administration. I'm devastated. I'm weeks into this gig. I can't replace the founder. There is nobody like Marilyn Wheaton. So I give it about 20 minutes thought, and I called the chairs of 4 other statewide arts organizations. And I said, I don't know who you are. I frankly don't know what you do, but empathize with me, sympathize with me. What would you do? And what my real purpose was to try to build a relationship to a point where they would have enough trust in each other that we could actually meld them together into one organization. And it took me 2 years, who knows how many hours. The negotiations were just mind-numbing. But you know what? We merged 4 of the 5 and created an organization called ArtServe Michigan, which in the end picked up the 5th group that I was hoping to merge. That taught me so many lessons. It taught me in a frustrating way that nonprofits could take richer, fuller advantage of private sector success. In the private sector, if you got company A and company B, and you got the CEOs or the board chairs kind of sniffing around each other, trying to figure out, well, should we actually buy out this other corporation or meld together? It's all about the bottom line. If we put these two organizations together, could we increase the profit of the new organization beyond the individual corporations? But in the nonprofit sector, it isn't about money. It's about mission. It's about the person who is heading the organization up. Oh, we can't sacrifice Sally at the altar of mergers with other groups. And frankly, I think it is about money. It's philanthropic money. But if you can through efficiencies, if you through affiliations, federations, or outright mergers, if you can stretch the amount of money you have, you're going to serve more people in better ways. So that's one. And the second one I learned from that is that nonprofit leaders sometimes view themselves as community volunteers, and that's okay. But a community volunteer is different than a person who feels a sense of fiduciary responsibility, who has a sense of how can I improve the balance sheet at the end of the year for my organization, who has business savvy. And not every board has that kind of quality of its directorships. And I think a lot of nonprofits that I can name really need to stretch the vision of who they should be recruiting onto their boards. Really hard-headed business types. My personal story is not probably any vastly different than other people's, but I was born and raised in Saginaw. My father was a railroad conductor. My father dropped out of school in the 8th grade because in the Depression, he felt guilty about eating at home, figuring that his two sisters and his mom and dad couldn't really afford another meal for him. My mother did graduate from high school and did work as a nurse's receptionist. But when I came along, Mom, as was so true in the post-World War II era, Mom said, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to stay home, raise the kid. There was very little in the way of philanthropy in our family. One was just a function of money. My father didn't make enough money to be really generous. There was always a sense, however, of strong religious faith. And if there were to be any charitable checks written, it was on Sunday mornings dropped in that little bowl. When I came to Lansing in 1972 to work for Governor Milliken, it changed my life. I can't imagine anyone in the world luckier than I to have as a first boss a gentleman statesman, brilliant leader, kind-hearted, tolerant, empathetic, sympathetic. You'd have to go into Roget's The Source to find enough good words to say about Bill Milliken. And he was the one who basically taught me the life lesson that, given is a heck of a lot better than taken. Being generous with your time, being generous with money, helping people who aren't as advantaged as you are, helping them become self-reliant, not just stay on, the dole, if you will, for years and years and years, of exciting people to think outside the box and to grab opportunities that might otherwise be closed off to them. Bill Milliken was the person who taught me philanthropy. That's.
Had you wanted to go into government?
I had kind of a crazy early liking of politics. I can actually remember the Stevenson-Eisenhower campaign of 1956. How old was I? 7. That's how young I started getting it in my blood, and it'll probably never leave my blood at this point. I love politics. I like public policy now more, and how government works. I like government processes. I like that inside baseball.
How did you get into the governor's office?
Well, it was a quirky thing, but again, how I got to meet Governor Milliken, how I got to be lucky enough to actually join his staff was, again, through not who you know, who you got to know. I was a volunteer on U of M's campus for the Washington County Republican Party. I said to the county chair one day, her name was Nancy Chase, I said, is there any candidate out here, a Republican candidate, who I could help in their personal campaign? She said, there is. She said, we have this fine legislator who's got a new district. His name is Ray Smith. And she said, if you'd like, I'll pick up the phone and call Ray and see if he could use another volunteer. He did. I did. We had a successful campaign, got elected. About a year later, I discover that I am supposed to take a summer internship during my master's program at U of M in public policy, and that I have to have some kind of a government-related job for the summer, instead of going, as I had always planned to do, back to the railroad to make a fortune and pay off my school responsibilities. So I called Ray Smith, and I said, could you kind of snoop around Lansing and see if by any chance there'd be an internship, maybe even a little pay for some job? He calls me back within an hour. He said, how would you like to work for Governor Milliken? I said, whoa. Came up the next day for an interview, hired on the spot, and again, it's just one of those serendipitous moments. But again, it's all a function of how many people, you can reach out to, get to know, bond with. Well, one lesson I've already passed on to our 26-year-old daughter who lives in New York. Actually, two things. Number one is a love of culture in all its different forms, not just the fine arts and not just arts in general, but just culture, the way people behave, and the things they create. That stuck. That's in her gene pool now. The other thing, though, is to always be attentive to your friends' needs. And as your friends expand, their needs are going to expand, and there's going to be demands on you. And don't ever view that as a burden. View that as a great opportunity to help, a friend in need. And I think that will extend in her life to her being very charitable in her volunteer activities, maybe she'll never get rich, but she'll, to the extent she can be somewhat generous in giving to causes, that will be it.
Give up what she has.
Yeah. And she, one thing when she was at the University of Michigan undergrad, she called me one day and she said, Dan, I'm going to perform in a Gilbert and Sullivan opera. I said, oh, right, I love Gilbert and Sullivan. So within 6 months, she was in 2 different performances. And 6 months after that, I get a call from her one day saying, they want to elect me president of the Gilbert and Sullivan Society. And I said, you're bravo, you're a me, Find an organization and head right to the top of it. So yeah, so she's a real trooper.
Yeah, this is your only daughter.
Our only daughter.
Yeah.
Our only.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch them grow up.
Oh, it's magnificent. What I've advised friends who are just about to start a family, now they're the sons and daughters of friends, is that every day gets better with a kid. Every single day, from the minute they're born, you can see 24-hour progress if you're attentive. And I said, that'll extend through the teen years. You don't have to make the teens a brutal family bloodbath. Erica got better 13, 14, 15, 16. And frankly, come on, if you're a parent and you can't outthink a 13-year-old, there's something wrong with you.
That's exactly right.
Michigan's always been an entrepreneurial state until we got fat and sassy with the wealth of the auto manufacturing sector. And I think we let down our guard in the 1940s and 50s. We were happy without a high school diploma. You could still afford a cottage in the Northland. You could afford a new car every couple, 3 years. And I think Michigan has been in a rut now, unfortunately, of about 2 generations, where we've forgotten that fabulous entrepreneurs left us these legacies of not just within philanthropy, but within the auto sector and cereal making and furniture making. And we need to regain Michigan as a spot where entrepreneurs can thrive. What I say to the grad students is, you've got probably just as much luck getting a capitalization from a bank, from a family member, from friends, to start up your own company than you have of landing a job that somebody else has written the job description for. So you sit back one of these days and you write your perfect job description for yourself. How many hours you want to work? How many days a week? What do you want to do with your time? What do you want as a product? And let me help you find the capital to do that. You don't have to work for somebody else. You can work for yourself. I think we need to rebuild that sense of entrepreneurialism badly, because we just inherited a fabulous situation that now we've seen drift away. The manufacturing sector is certainly in decline, with very little prospect of it bouncing back to where it was. We just got to find young and old talent who are willing to roll up their sleeves, start their own firms, and start their own philanthropies, start their own charities.